well, are you doing this because you've got to? And I had to say, well, no. And even if we did have to, we would want to do it anyway. And it's not just because of students. We all live on the same planet. We're all concerned about this stuff. So we produced that. We got a little badge to put on companies that are doing well, to provide students with more information, because we do know that it's about number 3 or 4 on students' values about working for purposeful work in organizations that are have sustainability plans. And the specific things we're doing, Katie, on the next slide, please. So here are some specific opportunities we're running in Oxford. So we run a whole series of exclusive internships for Oxford students, and there's a whole stream of them in energy and sustainability. We have sessions on introduction to sustainability careers. Last year, we pioneered The Only Way is Ethics, TOWIE, which is a series of lectures on showing people that actually working in these areas is just as good as any other sorts of careers. So you can have a purposeful, sustainable job in a great company and still, earn a good living. And coming up, of course, in line with COP26, we have a week of events in the 4th week of our autumn term, about a week before COP26, and working with our colleagues in Smith School of Enterprise and Oxford Climate Society. So we are trying to mainstream this and to show students that you can combine working with ethical and sustainable companies as well as having a great career. That's my bit for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Right, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Helen. I'm UK Recruitment and Partnerships Director at Oxford Brookes University. So within my role, I have responsibility for the recruitment of UK students to our undergraduate and postgraduate talk programmes, as well as our work to diversify our intake and also our apprenticeships and our partnerships work with further education colleges. Can I go to the next slide, please, Katie? I'm just going to say a brief bit about how this kind of fits within the wider university strategy, and I'm going to hand over to a couple of colleagues to speak about their kind of research in this area. We've just recently relaunched our university strategy, which takes us through to 2035, and as part of that vision statement is our commitment to equipping students with the skills, the knowledge and the mindset and attributes they need to succeed in a complex and an uncertain world. And really at the heart of the kind of educational experience at Oxford Brookes is that combination of scholarship and practice. And I think we've got some research areas and research centres that really embody that. And I think particularly of relevance today and featured in the Advanced Oxford report, particularly around sustainable architecture, a sustainable built environment, and also around our motorsport and electric vehicles. So I'm going to hand over to Andrew and Brady, and if we can move on to the next slide, just to ask them to introduce themselves and their work. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Andy. I'm a full-time academic in our Faculty of Technology, Design and Environment, where we are doing an awful lot of work in things to do with the future of transportation. I also lead our autonomous driving group, so my areas of interest there are in how autonomous vehicles work, how we can develop improved perception systems to make them work better and see the environment better. But one of the particular areas that's kind of interest in this context is looking at how the vehicle might integrate with the smart city, and therefore how we might see improvements in efficiencies of transportation systems, and how we might be able to use that to drive a sort of greener transport network and system. And perhaps I can hand you over to Brady, who can tell us about our high voltage energy storage group.
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Brady Plandon, and I'm a research fellow in the future of transport within the high voltage and energy storage research group in the Faculty of Technology, Design and Environment as well. And this is a new group that we have that's kind of aimed towards electrification research, both in terms of passenger, heavy duty and motorsport applications, as well as kind of further discussion around testing, modeling, controls for second life applications, but also first life applications as well. And this area kind of goes twofolds, both with student training in this area, which is a huge university direction, both with our formula student activities that you can see on the bottom, aiming towards equipping students with the knowledge for the upcoming changes in the industry, both in automotive and motorsport, but as well as giving them the capability to start diving into the next generation of some of these discussions and some of the research areas that we're directly tackling as well.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Next slide, please, Katie. David?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name's David Martin from UK Atomic Energy Authority. I started about 200 years ago, I think, as an apprentice at UKAEA. Graduated, wasn't quite that long ago, but it feels it, and finished my career as COO, working directly within the authority. I've always been an advocate of apprenticeships and skills training, so I took on the role of Director of Oxfordshire Advanced Skills after having been successful in winning quite a lot of money from BEIS to build apprenticeship training hubs across the UK. So we started with one at Culham, which is with our training partner MTC, who you'll hear from shortly, and that opened in 2019 and is going from strength to strength. On the back of that, and I think also on the back of the fact we delivered the project a year early and on budget, BEIS felt it appropriate to give us some more money to build centres to address skills shortages in other areas such as robotics, power engineering, energy storage, nuclear, and space. So the later clusters I talked about there, or sectors I talked about there, we're concentrating on training from level 4, sort of HNC level, up to PhD. So taking that whole training from sort of the base level right as far as you can go, I guess, as a PhD, and that pipeline of talent we hope will feed directly into industry across Oxfordshire and the UK, but also into our supply chain. So my later career was based working at Culham on fusion things. Fusion is probably the ultimate green energy source if it comes to fruition, or should I say when it comes to fruition. We're in the age of delivery now. So as a base load power, it's the ultimate deliverer with fuels of seawater and lithium, which are both abundant in the world. So that's our green credential. We've been, and everyone will have heard the joke that excuse me. Everyone will have heard the joke that fusion's always 30 years away. We don't believe it is anymore. We're currently looking at building a demonstration plant in the UK over the next 4 or 5 years before going into full production. So that will require a mass of skills across a very broad spectrum. So skills are something very close to our heart, not just for ourselves, but for, like I say, for allied industry and our supply chain and industrial partners, both in Oxfordshire and beyond. So that's me really, delivering apprenticeships, upskilling, delivering high quality apprenticeships in the context of the workplace to support ours and industrial growth. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks David. And Louisa?
Yeah, afternoon everyone. Next slide please. So I'm Louise Barton, Deputy Director of Sales and Marketing at MTC. Obviously, as Dave mentioned, working in partnership on the Culham site. Specifically, my team are responsible for the recruitment and placement of nearly 300 level 3 and level 4 engineering apprentices across our 2 sites, one in Coventry and obviously one in Oxford, and then placing those with employers on a regional and national basis. For those of you who haven't heard of MTC before, we were initially established as an independent research and technology organisation, with our main objective being bridging the gap between academia and industry, often referred to as the valley of death. Our role has increased since 2010 to cover not only research and development, but training as well. So we set up the AMTC site in Coventry, and we've expanded into factory design as well. Moving forward, we're looking at those higher level qualifications, as David mentioned, so that we have a step-on, step-off journey from level 3 right up to level 7. And that's me. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm going to just jump in here. I think it might be a little bit challenging to get everybody to introduce themselves because there's quite a few people on the call. So what I'd like to encourage you to do when we move into the breakout rooms, can everybody just take a little bit of time at the beginning just to introduce themselves to each other, and when we come back into plenary at the end to discuss the key messages that we've had from the breakout rooms, we'd like to invite people to speak, and if you could introduce yourself if it's the first time that you're speaking when we come back into plenary, that would be great. Thank you. So I'm going to set the scene a little bit in terms of why we're having this workshop today. And as Sally has already referred to, this workshop has come as a result of a piece of work that Advanced Oxford undertook in 2020 and published in November of last year. Could I have the next slide, please? So for those of you who don't know Advanced Oxford, we are a not-for-profit membership group for companies and organisations, all based in the Oxfordshire region, all focused on innovation. So organisations and companies that have STEM at the heart of what they do, and are working together to bring the voice of the innovative business community into policy making, decision making, funding decisions, etc. So that there is insight and evidence around what is needed from a business perspective to support the development of the innovation ecosystem within Oxfordshire. And one of the ways in which we work is that we undertake research projects, typically 2 to 3 a year, where we look at an issue which is of importance to the membership of Advanced Oxford, and we think will provide useful insight and business perspectives into an issue that we believe to be important to understand, as I said, in order to support Oxfordshire's development for innovation to take place. We therefore took forward a project last year which was looking an examination of the green economy in Oxfordshire. The green economy itself is not easily defined. The Office for National Statistics defines it as companies working in low carbon, sustainability and environmental goods and services. And within that grouping, we focused very specifically on companies that were using innovation, science, technology, engineering, maths, data, etc. at the heart of their business model to develop new products and services. And a particular part of the work that we did was to look at the enablers and barriers to growth within those companies. Now, we have produced, and you could find on our website, and the web address is there, a number of case studies for individual companies that are working within this sector. And within that, you will see that a number of those reference skills and access to talent as a key issue for their companies. And we also identified and have put onto a business directory a group of over 160 companies that are innovation-based companies that are working within the green economy sector in Oxfordshire. But specifically in terms of the work that we did looking at enablers and barriers to growth, we saw that skills and talent was really a leading issue for this group of companies. So the very positive takeaway from the report, which was particularly pleasing given we were still in the depths of the COVID crisis at the time that this research was taking place, was that the companies that we interviewed and questioned for the research all were anticipating quite significant growth. So you can see that the range depending on the company and the size of the company, was anywhere between 10 to 500% growth that was anticipated over the course of the next 3 years. So that, of course, implies that they're looking for skills and that they're looking for talent. In terms of key issues as enabler of growth, the number one issue to emerge was investment, which I don't think we were particularly surprised around. But the next most cited issue was access to skilled employees. And that was seen not just as enabler, but also as something that companies found challenging. And over a third of respondents identified skills as a challenge, as I've identified here, and in particular, engineering and software and higher level skills were the areas that were seen as being most challenging. Now, I would like to also say that we asked some questions about use of apprenticeships as an enabler to growth, and also around training and development. And we had a very poor response to those questions. Now, it may well be the way that we phrased the question, but very few of the companies that we interviewed identified apprenticeships as something that they saw as an enabler of growth. Because we haven't been able to really drill into why that was the case, we can't provide very much insight into that. Now, I'm hoping that today we might start to peel back the layers of the onion a little bit. But we are taking forward some work now as Advanced Oxford that I hope will provide some greater insight into those issues. Now, really briefly, I know that I have on the call with us today Melissa Sherratt from Brill Power. Brill Power was one of the companies that we interviewed. Melissa, I wonder whether you might just mind unmuting yourself for a moment and just saying, as one of the companies that we interviewed and one that I know identified skills and talent as a key issue, whether you might just reflect very briefly on some of the challenges that you face within Brill Power.
Yes, certainly, that's no problem at all. So yes, I work for Brill Power. You interviewed Carolyn Hicks, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. But what Brill Power does, so everyone is aware, is we work in energy storage, and we are building sort of intelligent battery management systems. So we look at sort of the lithium-ion batteries that are being used to sort of store and implement the green energy of the future, so sort of solar, all that kind of stuff. And we're just trying to make sure that lithium batteries and batteries themselves are used as efficiently as possible. So we're really working at the cutting edge of battery technology. So because of working at sort of that boundary of technology, we really do need highly skilled people. We have hardware engineers, software engineers, firmware engineers, and it's finding people that are skilled and also able and happy to work in a startup, I'll be honest. And so that's sort of the challenge. We did a big recruitment campaign between sort of October and February. We went from a team of 15 last summer, and we're currently a team of 24. And it took a lot of effort to try and find employees to join our team with the skills that we needed in sort of battery control technology and all sorts of things. And the other thing is that our company, sorry if I'm talking too much, but our company, as an example, we have 24 employees, and actually 13 of our employees are not UK residents. So sort of some of them came to Oxford to study, and we sort of managed to grab them and keep them. But we do have quite a lot of talent from sort of outside the UK. So we're very, very niche in what we do. So attracting the people with the skills in sort of the Oxford area is like sort of is high on our priority.
That's great. Melissa, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to hearing more of your insights in the discussions. So hopefully that sets the scene for what we're wanting to discuss today. If I can just move to the next slide. And so this is just taken as from the report. I know it was circulated. Please do take a look. It also provides a really good overview of the green economy landscape in Oxfordshire. So hopefully it will be useful to some of you to take a look at that. So Sally, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks. Next slide, please, Katie. So I just thought I'd really, I'm just going to be by PowerPoint. I just want to give you a really quick overview of some of the work that we're doing as part of a LEP, and some people might not be aware of, you know, what LEPs are, and certainly what we're doing within Oxfordshire. So LEPs were set up in 2011 with the coalition government. We are one of 37 LEPs that are in operation. We have got a very exciting vision for Oxfordshire and how we can support, and it is business support and ensuring that businesses are able to grow and the communities around actually can benefit from that growth in having jobs and in creating what's a vibrant, sustainable, inclusive, world-leading economy, and driven by all of those excellences that we've kind of talked about already. But some of the outcomes from a LEP, and I think it's probably what's really key, is we've delivered, LEPs as a total have delivered over £7 billion worth of private sector investment, supported just under 200,000 businesses, helped to create over 180,000 jobs, and helped to build around 93,000 homes. So if there's any kind of validation as to what LEPs do, that hopefully might help as well. So next slide, please, Katie. So the local industrial strategy was launched in summer of 2019. There's a skills initiative there is really to build education and skills system which is agile and responsive to Oxfordshire businesses, and hence the, you know, why we've worked with Sarah today to kind of create this opportunity to start hopefully identify some of the skills that need to be bolstered and in engineering and software engineering, which is highlighted. I think that for us, it's our responsibility as a LEP to try and do this, to have, we're kind of the glue that brings agencies, government together to start looking at that. We have created a local skills plan and action plan, which has gone to the Department of Education this year to look at what are the challenges, what are the gaps in delivery. And that's going to be refreshed in November to really help having those strategic discussions as to what challenges we do have and why we can start to put actions to and put actions in place to try and mediate that. Next slide, please. So Skills for Business is the programme that this is being delivered through. It works with primarily SMEs up to 249 employees. It offers over £1,800 worth of consultancy to help businesses navigate what is, we recognise, a very challenging skills landscape with multiple opportunities. There's different support there, but it's how we can offer it under one roof, and that's what we're doing through the Skills for Business programme. So whether it's upskilling current staff, developing a talent pipeline, apprenticeships, whatever, the team are able to support, and certainly give us a shout if you're interested in finding out more. Next slide, please, Katie. So really wanted to cover off some of my colleagues' operational support is through the Business Hub. We've got grants that we are offering, peer networks, and actually there's a huge amount of support there available to SMEs, which has got, basically you can fill out a business support tool, and then it's created a business support action plan, and that the work there, the team we've actually given out over £1 million worth of funding in the last financial year. So it's really out there trying to support businesses. Certainly we recognise with COVID it's been difficult, but even to keep businesses afloat, we've got that support and that help. So again, any inquiries, please let us know. And finally, we've got the Inward Investment Hub. Sorry, Katie, next slide, please. Thank you, which really worked with the Department of International Trade to help support overseas businesses come into Oxfordshire to secure international investment and trade. And you can see from the stat there in 2019-20, we've supported over £538 million worth of investment, supporting 680 jobs. Thank you, and that's my presentation. So, Sarah, back to you. Sorry, Sarah, you're on mute.
Yeah, no, I knew that was going to happen at some great. Well, we're now going to divide into the discussion group. So we're going to put people into breakout rooms. So please stay on the line and you will be allocated to a group. We would like to discuss these questions within the session. So really trying to understand the skills gaps, looking at what strategies are being used to try and assist with recruitment, what support is needed, and then, as I said in my introductory comments, it would be good if we could have a little bit of a discussion about the use of higher level apprenticeships and apprenticeships across the board. So we'll invite everybody to go into the group. We're running slightly over, but I suggest that we stick to 30 minutes within the discussion group, so there's plenty of time to cover all of those topics, and then we'll bring everybody back to feed back into the plenary.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We are now joining the main group. I'm just waiting for confirmation that we've got the rest of the other group with us.
We are with you, Sally. Right.
Okay, perfect. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Perfect. Shall I ask, I think, Jonathan, would you I think you're doing some scribing there?
Yeah.
Great. So, Sarah, I'll hand over to you if I may.
Right, well, we focused on the first question in our group. Melissa Sherratt fielded most of the answers, being a single that seemed representative of real live business. I think what we learned was both sides are, well, new business, green tech, which is basically high tech and new tech. If they're small businesses when they start, they don't really have the bandwidth to run through processes as properly, or to have apprenticeships as much as they would like. But as they get to a certain size, and it seems like around 24, maybe a bit bigger, then they can start to recruit in a good way. There's a plea that actually, to address the skill shortage, businesses have to do their bit of thinking longer term. How are we going to do training? Of course, there's a piece in the FT yesterday. This is writ large in the building trade at the moment, that the building trade has relied on European builders who've all gone home, so they've got the same problem. And then on the other side, for the sort of supply side of the students, yes, they need to turn up with probably better programming skills. They don't have to be formal. They can be hobbies, or they can just demonstrate that they are more than just sort of classical engineers. The sort of engineering I did 30 years ago at a other university is long gone, and now, you know, we need to be doing programming. But they also need to be aware that the culture of these new tech firms is really exciting. It's challenging. It's dynamic. And you must be prepared to fail and try lots of different things. And indeed, there was a plea at the end saying, in a way, it's a bit late when we get to university. We should be in with the schools and with the GCSE years to be saying, come and see what businesses really are like now. It's probably not, and I'm very familiar with this, what your parents talk about or what your school teachers talk about. It's really moved on a lot. It really is a lot like you see on TV. So go in and visit these places and think, oh, I could aspire to that. And that actually will help me direct my GCSE targets, and then whether I go into an apprenticeship or an A-level or an IB, and then to university. So it's inspiring the pupils when they're in their sort of 14, 15 years old, pre-GCSE choices, and then on through university with the skills and the culture.
Jonathan, thank you. Can I assume that you've reached the end of your comment?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Okay. I think I sort of cycled that.
Great. Is there anybody else from the group that Jonathan was in that wants to add anything to the discussion, or anything that you a particular burning platform that you would like to address? I'm hearing silence, so I'm assuming not, in which case, Helen, can I invite you to come and feedback from the second group?
Yeah, sure. I've got a challenge to be equally as concise. I think we tried to cover the range of questions, but I think actually our kind of I'm not sure I can structure our responses against these questions. It was a really interesting conversation. I think some of the things that our group discussed was that actually when we look at the skills gaps, we're talking about kind of green skills in a very broad sense. And the kinds of skills gaps that exist. So David mentioned around kind of data management, software engineering, cybersecurity, are skills that are not unique to a particular sector. We talked quite a bit about the pipeline of talent coming through, and I guess is linked to the fact that in response to question 2, actually we do think, and the group we're talking about, there is a tendency to look at staff that have got existing professional experience or who are qualified to a high level, potentially postgraduate level. And so, you know, we got comments at the end around potentially those kind of university spin-off companies recruiting in their own image, and linking in with Jonathan's comments, not necessarily thinking along the timeline to look at something like an apprenticeship and think about what skills and what roles do we need to develop for 2 years, 3 years time. And I think we had quite an interesting conversation, and it feels to me there's more there for us to think about the universities who are supporting students who are very aware and very keen to differentiate themselves as they are about to enter the employment market, and are keen to look at things to do, and that might include postgraduate study, but it also includes the other kinds of opportunities that universities offer. But how we mix that up with then the skills shortages that we're seeing, and they're particularly being at higher level. And actually we went in I took us in a slightly different direction to the schools outreach, which is actually, if we're thinking about the students who are coming into our 2 universities who are not necessarily and unlikely to be in high numbers, those students going through our local schools and colleges. And I know there's work that the LEPs undertaking around graduate retention, but something there around actually, yes, differentiation is important, but also actually it's aligning your skills to where you think those industry gaps are. So I think there's a lot of synergies with the kind of comments Jonathan was making about really understanding what the real employment opportunities look like and what they're looking for. So I'm just skimming through my notes. I think what we saw around apprenticeships is that very similar to comments from the other group, that actually it's often the size or the stage of an organisation's evolution that can be the barrier to them getting involved. And we heard some interesting kind of insight from Karen and others around the Kickstart scheme, and that's really raised awareness of the types of opportunities that could be available. But the enabler there seems to be the fact that you can work through a gateway organisation who just sort of sorts it for you, and actually there isn't an easy way to dip your toe into apprenticeships. Taking on one apprenticeship can sort of pushes you full throttle into the whole kind of everything that's involved. And the Kickstart scheme seems to be quite a good model. That there is potentially increasing interest, particularly through the pandemic, around apprenticeships, and those as a potential to start to generate growth in some organisations, and perhaps in a less costly way than recruiting graduate or postgraduate students. So that's not as coherent, and I'm sure that other members of my group will want to chip in when you give them the opportunity to, Sarah, but a summary of our thoughts.
Helen, thank you. I thought that I can see David applauding. I thought that was a pretty effective.
I could feel his scrutiny as I was speaking.
Summary of the discussion that we had, but again, the same invitation to participants within Helen's group. Is there anybody who wants to add anything or feels that a point was not captured that they would like to see captured at this point. I can't see everybody's faces, but equally I can't hear anybody that's unmuted themselves, so I'm assuming not. Great, okay. Sally, shall I pass back to you? Do you want to reflect on what has?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you. I think it's both. I think really positive what the feedback is from both groups. I think for me, what is it out of this group? What is it? I think we've seen some of the challenges. There are opportunities there. If there is a way for the group to feed back to us and say, okay, this is what we would like to do. Is there any actions that we could take from this as to how we could move forward, look at that? I mean, we have got work with young people, secondary schools. We've got both the universities here. We've got our representatives, and we certainly will feed back some of the outcomes in this event to our provider network meeting, which we have with our independent providers across the county. We meet with them 3 times a year to talk about issues that they're looking at and how we can support them. So what is it as actions? What is it that we can walk away with and say, this is what we want to be working on moving forwards, and into kind of seeing how we can look at this more fully in kind of trying to get this I wouldn't say challenge, but kind of start looking at this in a larger breadth. Sorry, I can hear my husband. He's presenting just around the corner from me. So if you can hear him, that's that. So yeah, is there anything that we need to be doing?
So I'm going to jump in. So the group that I was in, we had what I thought at the beginning was a particularly interesting and useful conversation about and it was focused in a particular area, but about companies that are seeking the ideal candidate with 10 years of experience in a particular area, and the challenge that those individuals are in short supply. Joanna Hart from Harwell campus, who was in our group and I hope is still on the line, was talking about what are some of the things that can be done to address the fact that those candidates don't exist. So where are the opportunities for short courses, upskilling type of activities? So I certainly saw that as something that would be valuable. I do think I may have caught a little bit of the very end of your conversation, the group that you were in, Sally, as I joined, and I think that we had quite a lot of interesting discussion about how graduates differentiate themselves and how they find that first job and how they understand what the opportunity is. Just as a slight aside, the project that we're now working on as Advanced Oxford, we're trying to have a look at some of the recruitment practices and try and understand what channels companies are using to advertise their roles, including their own websites, and on some very early analysis of a sample of around 200 companies. It's even the case that many companies don't advertise the roles that they have available on their own websites. So I think that there are some things around trying to look at how the Oxfordshire labour market works and how opportunities within it are presented to potential candidates, particularly in earlier career roles, I would suggest. So those are a couple of thoughts from me.
Thank you. Joanna, are you able just to come on the call? Just to, do you want to say any more on that?
Yeah, I think Sarah probably said it all. I think the challenge we've got is just getting people to think more creatively. Certainly, I know across the Harwell Space Cluster, trying to get people to think more about the early stage recruitment and how that can help fill some of those opportunities, but many of them just aren't quite there yet, and then it's just how we actually help them on that journey and how we can sort of support them to take on apprenticeships and some of those earlier stage people as well. So I think but also I think just getting the companies, as Sarah just said, about how do you get them to advertise more effectively? How do you get them to ask for the skills, or as Karen was saying earlier, the potential that they've got, rather than the fact that they can just slot in and do that job today, because all we're then doing is creating that musical chairs. And I think, to Sarah's point as well about those advertising of roles, this is something we've been looking at Harwell campus. And when you're looking at early stage career, probably people do think about location because they might look at where they've been at university or where they live close to. But when you're looking at mid-career, actually location is much less relevant. You're looking at your potential or the next stage in your career, unless you are just looking for something very local, in which case it's musical chairs. But if you're making that move, it's got to be for the right career piece, and that's something we're looking at with the Harwell campus skills strategy, is that sort of mid-career piece, because that is a harder bit to fill.
Thank you, that's really helpful. So I mean, if there was, I think there's Steve's put a comment in there talking about investigating a central talent pool for candidates and vacancies in Oxfordshire high-tech sector. Is that something that would work? Is that something that people would see the benefit of? Melissa, do you want to come in?
No, I definitely think that could be a benefit. Yeah, as I said, having the talent pool to find is definitely something that would help, I think, everyone in the industry. The only thing I will also mention is that I think it's important as well to make it easier to find people in Oxfordshire if we want to keep sort of people working in Oxfordshire, because obviously with the pandemic, although we're not thinking along these lines, I can see a lot of companies start to think like, oh, we can have an engineer who's not here and they could just work remotely. So then you could have quite a lot of companies hiring outside, and then you don't keep sort of the skills and the knowledge and what makes Oxfordshire such a great place for industry. That's just another thought I had mentioned.
So Melissa, just picking up your point, you had an intern that you said that you would then become a full-time employee, which is fantastic. So taking that, I mean, talking to Jonathan and Helen at Brooks, is there a way that, again, is that an entree that we can try and help forward with? Is there a way that we could get more businesses to offer that as a potential route through to with internships? What is the process? Can the universities have their own recruitment company? I know this, I wouldn't think the manpower or the expense, but is there a way that you've got the talent there, you've got the young people, you've got the pipeline there of young people with the right skills, they just need the opportunities? How can we marry the two together? Jonathan, you put your hand up first.
Well, actually, Helen was before me, so I'll defer to Helen.
Helen?
Thanks, Jonathan. It was actually around another point, so I'll keep my hand up for later. But I mean, on that, so we already have, so yes, I'm sure there will be interest. We do quite a lot in this area. We have a particular scheme around, and I think it is fairly local, SME specific internship scheme. We work with Santander universities on that. So for funded internships, particularly around SMEs, rather than the kind of larger scale. Something we've also been looking at is funding, which is a particular issue. So we've been looking at the which of our students are able to take up those opportunities, and how we as a university can support through funding so that some of our students from lower income backgrounds are able to afford to take up an internship, even when the pay that can be relatively low. But obviously working locally is really a big part of that, and not feeling the draw that actually an internship means moving to London for your summer. So I think there'll be a lot of appetite that it's not directly under my remit. I'll hand over to Jonathan, but I'm sure from the comments in our group with Andy and Brady would have thoughts around the interests of students and the things that they currently find that they want to get involved in, but maybe find it hard, and we could help to facilitate.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm coming from the position of how we educate the students to want to stay. We know that most students want to stay around their home university, whether it's Oxford or Manchester or Bristol, because they've been here 3-4 years, they love it. How do I get to work here? I think the pandemic will exaggerate that as well. People saying, I mean, the normal draw for Oxford students is to go to London. I think that's less of a draw at the moment. The draw for our very skilled engineers and STEM students is to go into the city. So we need to fight against that, if you like, although naturally I'm completely impartial. I mean, we've run OX postcode fairs in the past, but I think some a more concerted sort of fair about this is how you get to stay in Oxfordshire. You spend the next 2 or 3 years, as well as doing your degree, you've got to build up these other skills because employers are going to want them. B, you go out and do some work in them. We brought over a program that we borrowed, copied, whatever, from Copenhagen, which was the micro internships, which is just 1 week on specific projects that run 4 times a year. And that seems to be, we also run a summer internship program, but the micros, which we're happy to share with anybody, is much less work for the employer. That you've only got the student for 5 days. There isn't the issue about paying. They've probably got accommodation anyway, just up the road. And as long as they're doing a real project, they're not, as Melissa said earlier, sort of making the tea. They're doing real projects. We are so that's a program as well that gets people in the door to say, oh wow, this is quite different from what I thought. It's not sort of heavy industry. This is modern engineering, as I think Brady pointed out. It's really quite different from lathes and milling machines and oil and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, so it's really raising awareness, I think, and sharing the opportunities. So I'm just conscious of time. Mark, I've got just a quick comment. Sorry, a quick comment from Karen Tolley. SME businesses I've spoken to are keen to upskill existing employees and open up to low-level jobs to apprenticeships. Helen has got a comment there. You can obviously have a quick look. And Christopher, if you're looking to engage, build awareness of skills jobs roles for secondary school students, Science Oxford can help facilitate. Fantastic. Mark, do you want to just round us off, and got Melissa just to finalise?
I think just something that just came to me for the network, for the provider network meeting is actually, I think we need to engage with companies like Melissa's a lot more to find out what are the type of skills they're looking for in that sort of modern engineering, to make sure that we have providers within Oxfordshire that are actually delivering apprenticeships that would suit those skills. Because I think we're doing very well for those who want to stand at lathes and milling machines and things like that, but those who want to do maybe the softer side of engineering with programming and that sort of thing, I would question whether we've got many providers actually doing any apprenticeships that fill those in Oxfordshire. And again, if they're not here, then we can't really solve the talent pool.
Thank you. Melissa?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add, I know it was the end, but 2 things. One thing I know that would really help with the internships, especially for companies like ours, is that we're so busy. I've noticed that it's very difficult to know how to stay in line with academia, and when you have to post the internship to interview them and get them in so they can get sort of their accredited internship. So I don't know how to fix that. But as I said, for us, I know that we were a bit late in the game this year to try and get interns, and we're struggling a little bit. So as I said, that sort of academia timeline and then a business timeline, at least for us, I feel isn't necessarily aligned. So that could definitely help, talking to businesses about, hey, do you want to start getting some applications out? And then similarly, you guys mentioned Kickstarter. I know we did Kickstarter and we did 2 roles. We did a business role and a technical role. And the Kickstarter people completely understood the business role, and I kept trying to talk to them about the technical role, but they didn't have time. And that was incredibly difficult to fill because we didn't get the time to explain the role. So I just think communication definitely, and again, possibly Brill Power is unique, but having companies obviously be willing to communicate is obviously really, really key. But I think it's keeping academia and the planning in line with the business that's still trying to run day to day would be a massive help.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's really positive. I think definitely we can take that away and talk with our colleagues and look at that and feedback. So that's really helpful. Sarah, I would literally 1 minute to 2. Do you want to sign us off?
Yeah, Sally, thank you very much. Well, the first thing to say is thank you very much to everybody that has participated. Really grateful for your contributions. It has been a very lively and interesting discussion, and we've had some really valuable insights shared from people. I would agree with Mark's comments. We've struggled, and I know it is a time constraint issue, to get some of the companies that we hoped would participate in this workshop to come along and give the time. So there's obviously also something for us to think about much shorter, sharper opportunities to have a conversation that maybe lasts half an hour, so that we can get companies to come and just talk in very specific details about the issues that they're experiencing. Nevertheless, I think we've had a really fantastic discussion around the issues, and it's good as we approach the end to see some thoughts emerging about things that we can take forward as a result. So thank you very much to everybody for your time, and great to have the opportunity to be working with you all on this.
Thank you. Thanks very much.